want you to imagine walking through a coastal port city in the Mediterranean.
Oh, like somewhere down in southern Italy.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe off the coast of Spain. And just notice how the air there feels completely different from, a strict, highly scheduled financial district up in northern Europe.
Oh, totally. Night and day.
Right. You might assume that buzzing, spontaneous, sort of up-for-anything energy simply comes from the sun and the wine.
Which is a fair assumption, honestly.
It is. But what if I told you that vibe isn't cultural at all? What if it's actually a 3,000-year-old genetic blueprint left behind by a completely vanished empire?
See, that completely flips the way we understand behavior. I mean, the climate, the sea, the beautiful architecture, all of that is just the stage setting.
Yeah.
The actors walking on that stage today are operating on an ancient biological script, one that predates almost everything we consider to be modern civilization.
Which brings us to the mission for today's deep dive. We are tracking a very specific, honestly somewhat mysterious group of people today, the Phoenicians.
The famous purple people.
Yes. Sometimes referred to in the ancient world as the purple people, because they manufactured this incredibly rare, super expensive purple dye.
Right out of sea snails, actually.
Which is wild. But what fascinates me is the irony of their legacy. Like, these are the ancient people who literally gave us the alphabet, the actual foundation of how we write.
Right.
Yet they barely left behind any actual books. No epic poetry, no grand histories of their own.
None.
Unlike the Greeks or the Romans, they mostly just left behind, like, ledgers, accounting records.
Because they were the ultimate pragmatists. I mean, writing an epic poem about the gods doesn't really move a shipment of olive oil across the sea.
Fair point.
And they were, above all else, global traders. But because they didn't leave behind massive marble monuments or, libraries full of papyrus scrolls, they left us with an incredible scientific puzzle.
Right. How do you track a civilization that just vanished into the ocean? And the answer, which we're digging into today, is that they left a digital signature encoded directly into human cells. But I have to challenge the mechanics of this right out of the gate.
Okay, wait on me.
Well, if they didn't leave massive, concentrated graveyards behind to pull pristine DNA from, how on earth did geneticists isolate a 3,000-year-old signature?
It sounds impossible, I know.
I mean, the Mediterranean has been a highway for millennia. You've got the Romans, the Greeks, the Ottomans, the Crusaders.
Just constantly moving and fighting.
Right, constantly mixing. So isn't isolating Phoenician DNA like pulling a single drop of red food coloring out of a blender that's been running for 30 centuries?
That is a great analogy. It is the ultimate genetic cold case. And honestly, if scientists had just tested a random sample of people around the Mediterranean, it would have been just noise.
Just a blended mess.
Exactly. They wouldn't have found anything. But the researchers behind the Genographic Project used this really brilliant methodology. They called it a colony strategy.
A colony strategy? How does that work?
So they went back to those boring accounting ledgers you mentioned and the ancient trading records. They used them to find the exact geographical coordinates where the Phoenicians built their major seaports.
Ah, so they ignored the inland areas entirely.
Completely.
They only looked at the specific coastal dots where the ships actually dropped anchor.
Precisely. So they went to modern-day populations living in Tyre over in Lebanon, which was, the original Phoenician home base.
Okay.
Then they sampled people in Carthage in Tunisia, which was their greatest colonial triumph across the sea. And they went to Ibiza in Spain, a major trading outpost.
Wow, so they really mapped it out.
Yeah, they specifically targeted the DNA of the people walking the streets of those exact locations today.
But wait, even in those specific port cities, how do we know a shared genetic marker belongs to the Phoenicians? I mean, couldn't it just be a bunch of random Roman sailors who happened to dock there 500 years later?
That is where the specific type of DNA they tested becomes crucial. They didn't look at autosomal DNA.
Which is what exactly?
That's the kind that recombines and blends from both parents every single generation. It effectively creates that blender effect you mentioned earlier.
Ah, okay. So what did they look at?
They looked exclusively at the Y chromosome.
Because the Y chromosome is only passed from father to son.
Exactly. And it passes down almost entirely intact. You don't get that messy genetic recombination.
That makes sense.
Think of the Y chromosome like an ancient text document that gets copied and pasted generation after generation. It stays exactly the same, except very occasionally a single random typo occurs.
Like a mutation.
Right, a mutation. And when that typo happens, every single male descendant from that point forward carries that exact same typo.
So by tracking these typos, Geneticists can basically build a precise paternal family tree.
Yes. So they were looking for a specific typo that only shows up in Tyre, Carthage, and Ibiza.
And let me guess they found it.
They absolutely found it. By cross-referencing the genetics of people in those geographically distant port cities, they found a specific mutation on the Y chromosome linking them all together.
Which is the J2 haplogroup.
That's the one, the J2 haplogroup.
Yeah.
And based on the mutation rate, they could date its expansion perfectly to the timeline of the Phoenician Empire, long before the Romans ever took over those routes.
Man, I love thinking about the J2 haplogroup as the ultimate ancient passport stamp.
That's a good way to put it.
Like if you take a DNA test today and that marker pops up, it is literal biological proof that your ancestors were the ones brave enough to sail right past the Strait of Gibraltar out into the open, terrifying ocean.
Yep, they chose navigation and trade over, conquest and war.
It's incredible.
It is a passport stamp, yeah.
Yeah.
But a passport stamp implies something passive, just a record of where you've been.
Right.
The reality of this genetic tethering to the sea is much more active. Because the J2 marker locked these populations onto the coastlines for millennia, it forced a secondary parallel genetic adaptation in their actual bodies.
Meaning the environment they were migrating through exerted immense evolutionary pressure on the rest of their genome.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the physical reality of this. Because we're not just talking about a fun trivia fact for a dinner party here.
No, not at all.
This ancestry dictates how your body operates today.
We really need to talk about deep metabolic memory.
Okay. Lay the groundwork for me.
So for 3,000 years, generation after generation, these seafaring ancestors lived on a highly specific fuel source. I mean, they were on ships and in coastal ports. They ate fish, olives, nuts, and they drank wine.
Which, I gotta say, sounds incredibly pleasant.
It does sound like a great vacation.
Yeah, but from an evolutionary standpoint, 3 millennia is a very long time to restrict a human body to one specific category of fats and proteins.
Oh, it's plenty of time. It's enough time to force the biological hardware to completely rewrite itself. To survive and thrive on that diet, their bodies evolved to extract the absolute maximum nutritional value from the long-chain omega-3 fatty acids found in all that seafood.
Wow.
And concurrently, because they lived on the sea and relied really heavily on preserved, salted foods for those long voyages.
Because no refrigeration.
Right, no refrigerators. Their bodies built incredibly powerful defense mechanisms against an excess of salt.
So let's break down the actual mechanism there. How does a 3,000-year-old diet physically manifest in our DNA today? Like, what is the hardware doing differently?
It comes down to a very specific set of biological instructions called the FADS genes. That's FADS.
Okay, FADS genes, what do they do?
These genes produce enzymes that are responsible for synthesizing and breaking down fatty acids in your body. And in populations with Mediterranean heritage, particularly those carrying this Phoenician trace we're talking about, scientists have found that these FADS genes are highly tuned for a marine diet.
When you say tuned, what is the enzyme actually physically doing to the food?
Okay, think of the FADS enzyme like a highly specialized millstone in a grinding mill.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Over thousands of years, this millstone has been carved with incredibly fine, delicate grooves. Grooves that are perfectly calibrated to catch and crush small, delicate seeds. In this analogy, those delicate seeds are the molecular structure of marine fats. The liquid, flexible, polyunsaturated fats you find in fish and olive oil.
So when you consume those, the FADS millstone catches them perfectly.
Exactly. It breaks them down efficiently and turns them into essential building blocks for your brain and your cell membranes.
Okay, so I want to apply this to the listener for a second. If I have this Phoenician genetic hardware, my millstone has those fine grooves, but I decide to pack up, move to a landlocked area like, say, the American Midwest.
You see where you're going.
And I adopt a diet that's really heavy in beef, heavy dairy, and saturated animal fats. What physically happens inside that enzyme?
Well, you are essentially throwing dense, heavy rocks into a millstone designed for delicate seeds.
Oh, man.
Saturated animal fats have a very rigid, straight molecular structure. The FADS enzyme literally struggles to bind to them. The millstone jams.
And when the biological machinery jams, it doesn't just stop quietly, does it?
No, it creates an absolute cascade of metabolic chaos.
Because it can't process it.
Right, because the enzyme can't process those rigid saturated fats efficiently. The fats just linger in your bloodstream, and then they begin to oxidize.
It sounds bad.
It is.
Right.
Your immune system recognizes this lingering oxidized fat as a foreign threat and triggers an inflammatory response.
Oh, wow.
So now you have chronic inflammation in the bloodstream, which damages the lining of your blood vessels. And that leads directly to severe cardiovascular risks, atherosclerosis, heart disease.
That completely reframes the entire conversation around nutrition for me. We hear about the Mediterranean diet constantly on social media.
Oh, all the time.
And it's usually packaged as this sort of lifestyle aesthetic, right? Like, eat some feta cheese, drizzle some olive oil, and you'll get glowing skin. It's treated like a generic wellness trend.
Yeah, it gets completely stripped of its evolutionary context.
Right. But what the genetic data reveals is that for carriers of the J2 haplogroup, the Mediterranean diet isn't an option. It's not a trend. It is the literal biological instruction manual for your specific hardware. Eating fish and olive oil isn't just healthy in quotes. It is the exact fuel required to keep your genetic millstone from physically breaking down. It's preventative medicine.
That is the perfect way to look at it. But if we follow the logic of this metabolic adaptation, we arrive at something even more profound, I think.
Okay, where does this take us?
Well, metabolism isn't just about digesting your dinner. The food you process fuels your brain. And the brain of a seafarer needs a very specific neurochemical engine to function.
Oh, I love this.
Yeah, the Phoenician trace fundamentally alters how you approach life, how you handle risk and discovery.
See, this is the leap that I find so compelling. It's one thing to say, my genes determine how I process olive oil. It's an entirely different thing to say, my genes determine why I feel restless at a desk job.
That they do.
So how does navigating the Mediterranean Sea actually alter brain chemistry?
To understand that, we have to look at the brain's reward system, specifically the dopamine receptors.
Okay, the pleasure centers.
Right. Now, when people talk about genetic behavioral traits, they often bring up things like the MAOA gene, the so-called warrior gene.
Oh, yeah, which researchers have linked to territorial aggression and a propensity for violence.
Exactly.
Like the urge to conquer the neighboring tribe and take their land.
Right, but we need to distinguish the Phoenician drive from that entirely. This genetic package is not about aggression at all.
So what is it?
Psychologists categorize this as high sensation seeking or novelty seeking. In populations adapted to exploration, the dopamine receptors, the parts of the brain that receive the chemical signal for pleasure and reward, they operate slightly differently.
How so?
They often have a much higher threshold for activation.
Meaning the baseline everyday world just feels a bit understimulating to them?
Precisely. To get the same feeling of satisfaction or reward that a normal person gets from a quiet day at home, a high novelty seeker needs a massive influx of new stimuli.
They need a rush.
Yeah. They don't get a dopamine hit from fighting an enemy. They get a dopamine hit from discovering something completely unknown.
Which perfectly explains why they were traders and not warlords. I mean, to be a warrior, you just need a sword and someone standing in front of you.
That's true.
But to arrive at an empty, barren stretch of coastline in North Africa, look at the sand and say, I'm going to build the megacity of Carthage right here from scratch.
You have to be a little crazy.
You do. You need a biological craving for the unknown.
You need a brain that mathematically calculates the massive risk of sailing into the open ocean, and instead of feeling fear, feels an overwhelming chemical reward just for trying.
I can't help but compare this to modern tech founders or venture capitalists.
Oh, the startup world is full of them.
Right. You know those serial entrepreneurs who build a wildly successful company, sell it for millions of dollars, and instead of retiring to a private island, they immediately start another company in a completely different, unproven industry.
They literally cannot stop building.
Because it's an itch they physically cannot scratch. It's the 3,000-year-old version of pivoting a startup to a brand new market.
Yep.
Their dopamine receptors are demanding that they build a new trade route, whether that's a fleet of wooden ships in antiquity or, a new software platform today.
And that biological demand has very real consequences for how we interact with each other today, especially when we look at relationship compatibility.
Oh, this is fascinating.
Imagine a partnership between one of these high novelty-seeking Phoenician types and someone with a more conservative, stability-focused farmer genetic history.
Oh, man, I can see the friction already. I mean, the farmer's evolutionary imperative is to plant the crops, wait out the long seasons, build a sturdy fence, and just stick to a reliable 5-year plan.
Exactly. The farmer's dopamine system rewards predictability, security, gradual growth.
Right.
The Phoenicians' dopamine system rewards disruption, motion, and immediate problem solving. If two people with these differing traits get together and don't realize they're operating on completely different biological operating systems,
the friction is immense.
it's explosive.
Because it feels like a moral failing. The farmer looks at the Phoenician and thinks, you are reckless, you're unstable, and you just can't commit to a plan.
Right.
And the Phoenician looks at the farmer and thinks, you are suffocating me, you're rigid, and you're afraid of life.
But see, once you understand the underlying genetics, you remove that moral judgment. It's not that one is right and one is wrong.
No.
It's that they survived the last 3,000 years using completely different evolutionary strategies. And if they understand that, they can actually become an incredibly powerful team.
Oh, I see. The Phoenician spots the new territory over the horizon, and the farmer builds the sustainable infrastructure to make sure they survive there long term.
Yes. They perfectly complement the blind spots in each other's dopamine systems.
Which brings me to something I want to say directly to you listening right now. If you are sitting in a corporate office today, staring at a spreadsheet and feeling this crushing, inexplicable guilt because you are painfully bored with a perfectly good and stable job,
We've all been there.
understanding your biological history might be the key to forgiving yourself. You aren't ungrateful. You simply weren't made to sit in the cubicle.
It's just not in your DNA.
You have 3,000-year-old momentum pushing you toward the horizon. You were born to build a fleet.
I love that. It's incredibly freeing to realize that your restlessness has an evolutionary purpose. When you step back and look at the sheer scale of this genetic footprint, it's astonishing.
Really is.
These ancient trade routes didn't just move physical goods like olive oil and purple dye around the map. They laid down the genetic foundation for the modern blue zones of longevity we see today around the Mediterranean coast.
It proves that our DNA is so much more than, like, a clinical map of potential diseases.
Well, way more.
It's a map of your character. It's a record of your inherent taste for life, your tolerance for risk, and the literal routes your body is primed to navigate.
Which brings us to the core philosophy that emerges from all of this history and science. Genetic awareness is the base.
Genetic awareness is the base. Everything else you do, how you structure your diet, how you choose your career, how you navigate your relationships, is built on top of that foundational hardware.
If you don't know the hardware, you're really just guessing at the software.
That is so true. As we wrap up this deep dive into the ancient past, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over on your own today. We've just spent this entire time dissecting how the physical, ocean-faring, risk-taking, all-of-eating daily routines of people 3,000 years ago successfully hard-coded themselves into the enzymes, the blood vessels, and the dopamine receptors we carry right now.
It's an unbroken chain of cause and effect spanning millennia. The physical actions of the past literally became the biological reality of the present.
Exactly. So ask yourself this. If their daily physical actions became our biology, what modern hyper-digital, screen-staring, highly sedentary habits are we currently hard-coding into the metabolisms and the minds of the humans who will walk the earth 3,000 years from now?
That is a staggering question. We are the ancestors they will be studying.
Something to think about the next time you find yourself endlessly scrolling. Until next time, keep exploring.